concluding panel discussion of this 2 days of symposium. And I would like to introduce Professor Hendrik Tieben, which is the moderator of the session, who will then introduce all the guests of these panels. Hendrik, it's your time.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I also want to say from also our side from the school, thanks so much, Francesco, for this amazing endeavor. And of course also now for this last part, also Hero and the Dean and all the students that participated and the winners. Now, before I introduce our 6 panelists, I will very quickly say a little bit something about the 5 sessions that we had in the last 2 days. Reason is also because I think 3 of the speakers or panelists haven't been in all the sessions and so on, so maybe it also helps them a little bit more to see the context, but I try to be short. But before I do this, also I want to congratulate Francesco for the great title of the entire series of events, or this overall event, basically by turning placemaking into making place, right? So I think we all were very amazed by this kind of little intervention, and which on one hand, according to Francesco, puts the emphasis a little bit more on the making. And there were indeed many people in the 5 sessions that also are actively involved in the process of making places. But maybe as somebody living in Hong Kong, I could not else than thinking about making places also, just because we all live very constrained and congested. There's also a way of creating this kind of breathing space or place for all of us to come together and so on, right? Now, I will not talk about every presentation, obviously, but just kind of very quickly, the whole event started with the first session yesterday morning, which was really putting the emphasis on the Greater Bay Area, which was, I think, a very important part in this endeavor. And to ask also in this Greater Bay Area, what are the opportunities to test new approaches to making places? I think we were very lucky because we Francesco invited also Miodrag Mitrasinovic from Parsons. One reason why I think that was great, because he's now at the moment publishing a book in which also many of the participants also have written on emerging public space approaches in the Greater Bay mega region. And I think it was for those, I think later all the sessions will be also online, the videos. I think it was a very good way how he started with this kind of question of the mega region and what kind of public spaces are created. Of course, many of them maybe the public space, more big projects, but also then by other contributions and also Miodrag's interest also in this kind of more small scale interventions, for example, discussed by Margaret Crawford, who's of course very interested in everyday spaces, everyday urbanism and so forth. Now, then it continued with a session that was particularly looking at urban design and bottom-up processes that might influence social life in public spaces in the Greater Bay Area, and with 4 speakers that all are producing very interesting projects with their offices in Hong Kong and Shenzhen mainly, among other places. In fact, they all work in other places as well, but there were also speakers, particularly also from Shenzhen, and we come also to that later. Then in the 3rd session, the question was more how to enhance the quality of public spaces in cities and making places to encourage social interaction. For this session, Francesco was able to invite also amazing speakers, 2 of them teaching at UCL, among them Matthew Carmona, who studies the field of public space, one of the eminent authors on public space, right? And he made a very interesting provocative presentation, and talking not about the privatization of public space, but the publicization of private space. So that gave thought for food for thought. And one other point that I found very interesting in his presentation, he was also showing examples of work that he's doing with other people on charters of public space that could be very, very useful to better manage and organize public space, particularly also manage public spaces. And he and would rather encourage use of public space than forbid. I thought that was also very useful and inspiring. I will not talk about all the other great speakers in this session, maybe just to mention that Sienna from Stipo in Amsterdam also referred to a new book that just came out on in the series of City at Eye Level, a book, and in this case, City at Eye Level Asia, and also with a lot of examples from Hong Kong, but also from various other places in Asia. It's a publication, if anyone is interested, can Google and download for free, but also very useful for our entire discussion, I think, in these days, right? Then two more sessions. Session 4 was then also a beautiful session on bottom-up approaches in informal urban activities, and also how particular theories can inform or better inform practice. This was interesting because in the day before we had, like in the particular last session, also something on the theoretical framework, how to think about formal and informal aspects of public space and how urban design can navigate there. And then I think we had this great presentation by Philippe Alfonso from Southern Europe and Eastern Europe, and then the great projects by Ecosystem Urbano, who made these amazing projects in Spain, and Derive Lab in Mexico. In fact, we had really presenters from all over the place. That's also all the different time zones and so on. And Francesco also presented his own work and his own research. Maybe we come to that also later. Now, the last session today at 2 o'clock from 2 to 4 was a session on, also very interesting, on how could Making Place become a more consolidated planning strategy to address critical issues and challenges at the district level and reinforce the local identity. That was also answering to some of the questions we had on the first day by Joel Chan, who was also a bit kind of criticizing from this kind of little tactical intervention in public space somewhere. How can that become something more in larger scale and also really consolidated in the planning process? It was a great presentation by Kate Mayrick and also by Nuno Soares, who were talking more on the district level. And then we had other projects, obviously from our great colleague, Peter Ferreto, his projects in Hong Kong and also in the rural areas. So another component, basically, aspect, and also by our colleague from City University, Gianni Talamini. Okay, so I want to end this very quick introduction of those kinds of earlier sessions here, because rather gives the word also to our speakers. So the 6 panelists now for this concluding session. There we have first Professor Yang Xiaochun, who is the Associate Dean of the School of Architecture and Urban Planning in Shenzhen University. And hello. So I'm very happy that you're here. And you were also working with Miro Drag and many of us before, and our partner in Shenzhen, also several of our PhD students are with you, and so on. And but also, of course, for this GBA topic, very interesting and very meaningful to have you here. And also your work yourself, also you work on public space issues. Then, of course, very important, we have Ethan Kent. He should be somewhere. I saw him online. I don't know if he has turned on his camera. Yeah, hi Ethan. I think I met you the first time on the Habitat 3 conference in Quito, but of course, for everyone who is working in the field of public space and placemaking, is of course knows Ethan and your work very well. First, I think the very long work for the project for public space, and then later basically upscaling and co-founding PlacemakingX. We can talk about this also later, basically becoming really already project for public space, very international, but even more look at various places in the world and so on. And also you worked on public space and placemaking projects, also on real projects also. No? Then I'm also very happy, and we're honored that we have Donald Choi here. Donald Choi has different hats, very interesting. On one hand, the CEO of China Jam, one of the biggest developers in Hong Kong. But at the same time, president currently of the Hong Kong Institute of Architecture and also of the Hong Kong Institute of Urban Design. So I'm very happy that you could join us again. So you were just here for the final reviews, and it's very important to have you as somebody who can also link from from making cities as somebody who's involved in actually building projects, large projects, and at the same time having, I believe, a lot of sense for placemaking and so on. So we come to that in a second. Then I want to introduce Jason Hilgefort, founder and director of Land, Civilization and Compositions. He was also one of the speakers in the second session. And also Jason is also teaching in Hong Kong U in the urban design program there, and also very involved in placemaking, and had a very important role also in the a very exciting Shenzhen Biennale, which was actually many of the biennales, particularly in Shenzhen and in other places, were probably very important for placemaking and creating a new forms of public space. So great to have you here. And then we have our two colleagues and basically the masterminds behind this event, right? So obviously we have Francesco here. I think I don't need to introduce you again. And of course, my young colleague here, Melody Yu, who is teaching with us all together here, but also research herself topics related to public space and cultural buildings. So a very specific aspect of public space. So it's great that you can be here. And obviously also you were working on various master plans as practitioner as well, right? So that's great to have you. Okay, so this is all from my part. Now, finally, I give the word to our guests. And I basically what I want to do is to go one time maybe around and ask each of you like one small question. And then from there, we take on the wider debate, right? So I thought maybe to start with Ethan Kent, because well, you're very young, but otherwise I would say like a father of the placemaking movement, right? To just explain to all of us, where do you see basically the relevance and the opportunities for placemaking, be it in New York, where you are, I think, located, and of course now you work in so many other places. Do you want to maybe kick off and tell us about your passion for this topic?
Sure. Well, thank you, Hendrik, and thank you for this great summary of what's been really an amazing conference. And I did miss some pieces of it because of the time zone, so I'm grateful for that. But wow, what a gift this whole conversation has been. What an incredible group locally and globally that you all have brought together. You realize this is like a full master's program or something in placemaking, and I have heard a lot of these people speak before, but it's so wonderful to hear them again and in this way. So a lot of what we're trying to do with the placemaking movement is simply support these kinds of cross-sector, discipline conversations, debate what public space is, how we all can best work together to draw on each other's skills and passions, and have an impact in the public realm. So, and I know Hong Kong has long been, a center for this conversation on many scales. There's a great sort of activist and NGO community there as well. I have gotten to go there several times, and actually 20 years ago I got to explore the Greater Bay Area, going through Shenzhen and Guangzhou and Zhuhai, spending time in Zhuhai and Macau, and I know things have changed a lot. But it really was a motivating trip for me for realizing how important it is to how a focus on place and public space can really turn upside down the process of urbanization, and how much more we have to learn about how to actually do that. So just a couple quick things about PlacemakingX. We something I founded with colleagues like Ping, who you'll hear from as well, to network, accelerate, and really grow the placemaking conversation globally, and connect the dots between efforts like this, and try to support conferences and local campaigns for placemaking in very much the way this conference is. And I want to get to how can we work together to build momentum from this effort, and what are some small things we can do. We sort of see the most successful change in cities really coming down to a group of people, a small group of people like this, that continue to sort of keep the thread, keep the narrative, make sure the learning continues, advocate, find out where the biggest obstacles are to better public spaces and help overcome those. And then, our job is to help you connect with some other cities that may have dealt with that challenge, or and also help, share and celebrate what you're doing well, help bring that message globally. So we now have 15 regional networks all over the world, and we have like you'll hear from Ping talking about Placemaking Malaysia as one of the newer ones, and we're trying to get sort of a Placemaking Asia network as well, that was launched sort of at her conference in Kuala Lumpur. We did do a big conference in 2019 in Wuhan, the end of 2019 actually. And that had a placemaking declaration that I encourage people to look at. I'll put the link in the chat for that. We think that was with UN Habitat, with local government and academic leaders, developed a declaration, and theoretically we tried to launch a network, a placemaking network for China that frankly still needs a lot of help and support. But we see this conversation as a way to sort of reinvigorate and build from that, and grow the Bay Area, but also perhaps the Chinese placemaking conversation. People, frankly, the declaration we developed there was something we couldn't have gotten past in New York or in the US. It was more progressive, more forward thinking. But right now, I think the world is we've all been sort of brought back into our homes, into our private spaces over the last year plus. But I think we've also realized our appreciation and our need for public spaces all the more. And it's as fertile a time as we're ever going to have on this planet to really think systemically about how we connect to place, how we can contribute to place, how we can reinvent our cities, our economies, our cultures around our public spaces. And we're seeing, really simple, low-cost ways that cities, here in New York and all around the world are reconnecting with the streets and with each other. But also how this conversation through efforts like this can be networked globally, how the learning can change much faster, how we can think deeper, we can support each other, we can challenge each other. And we're really counting on it's really going to be a handful of progressive nodes around the world that are going to lead this culture shift, the learning and the innovation. And so we're really counting on you all leading one of the key nodes of change and learning globally. So I'm looking, with that, I'll let other people speak, but I'm excited to have a discussion and really have this be sort of a strategic conversation about how we, how can, you all best work together? How can we support you? How can we connect you with people globally? What's the next step after this wonderful event?
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Ethan. And I forgot to say that actually, Ethan, with PlacemakingX is of course partner of this event also, no? So which is fully in line also with what you are saying. No? Now, let me give the word now to Donald Choi, because I think you might maybe also have some interesting contributions to this topic, because I know from some of your initiatives, not in detail, but that you work also, for example, in Chongqing with people together, like Architecture Commons and so on, that actually are very close to this kind of placemaking movement. And of course, you're also in Hong Kong, HKIUD. And on the other hand, you have really the chance to make a difference with your other job, right? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Again, I think this is a very relevant topic, and actually it's a very important topic because, you know, urbanism, everybody has been talking about it, and to a certain extent, more people are moving to city. So it is going to affect more people in future as we develop more dense city. But again, I think on the placemaking, I think, you know, when we talk about placemaking, a lot of the initiative has actually been through a very formal placemaking mechanism. It is about kind of a design, iconic buildings, really controlling the activities of the public space. I see kind of a placemaking really is about the social use of space. So it does not necessarily need to be a totally new design public space. We can actually add and kind of revigorous the, you know, bring out the life and activities of existing space. And that is where I think, you know, our effort, you know, around our company is go down to the neighborhood and the community and listen and understand what the community needs. You know, we have involved the Architectural Commons to conduct kind of a neighborhood focus group discussion seminar for us. You know, we talk to the residents as to how they actually would enjoy our open space. Is there enough shading, down to as, you know, small as detail as, you know, is the seat or bench comfortable? All of this, I think, is important because we are bringing back kind of important enjoyment into their daily life. And again, you know, we really want to improve the quality of life of the residents of the neighborhood. And it is not about, you know, just aesthetics or beautiful architecture. It's really about how we can facilitate their daily life through actually providing support, you know, for their use of the public space, adding in hardware where necessary. For example, benches, you know, how would the public toilet, is the cleaning frequency sufficient or not, and so on. So I think, you know, for me, and also, you know, as an architect, as urban designers, as I practice and, you know, start really to get feedback on the design, I appreciate that it is no longer sufficient just to look at the hardware. It's really looking at how we can create a caring community, and it comes with, you know, the software, the conversation, how to make people not feel isolated and lonely. You know, I met with you know, almost 80 years old residents in Chunwan, and every day, you know, he came down to a very actually small park, not even, I wouldn't call it even a park, just an open space, because it does not have any green kind of a planting. It's really is, you know, hard paved, not a very pleasant environment. but he came down just to meet people because he lived alone. So I think for us as urban designer, we really need to kind of ask ourselves, when we design public urban spaces, who are we serving? What would the contribution that we are making to their daily life? So I'm not a big fan of great grand kind of a formal public space. I'm much more interested in creating very small pocket of daily public space where community people can use.
Beautiful. In fact, I think that maybe in Tungchung, it might be a great place to work together with all of us to do some placemaking pilots and so on. I know there are many things bubbling up and very interesting. Let me now come to Professor Yang. I think you and maybe Jason, both of you could shed a little bit of light maybe on the situation in Shenzhen or on the other side of the border, right? I know you also work on public space projects and so on. Do you want to give some reflections on this topic of placemaking, public space in Shenzhen or in Greater Bay Area?
Yes, thank you, Hendrik. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah. I would like to exchange some ideas with colleagues here. I think in the Greater Bay Area, especially in Shenzhen, our recent very important task is to raise up our quality of the city, our environment. But we just built our city in just such a rapid speed. So most of our public space just lack of quite detailed thinking about the place, the design. But most of the place pay more attention on how beautiful is the city and how sometimes how can this place can make profit. Especially, let me make some example, like in the beach park, around Shenzhen Bay. It's quite beautiful park, and most of the place are very favorite for the people, but especially in those points just adjacent to the metro station, but quite a lot of space are just quite, looks beautiful and not easy for the people to communicate and to activate together. And the other example is in historical area, like Fenghuang village, and it is quite very typical example that the villagers just want to preserve their own buildings from ancient times. It is about 500 years old, but the leader of the villages would like to do this, and they ask one a company to run this old village, but the company only pay attention on how to make profit by themselves, but paid no attention to that how can the people in the community can share this space and can also have the same profit from the development. So although it is quite a kind of public space, but it is quite commercial oriented or something like that. So people don't like this kind of place, and it is not so shown by all the people in Shenzhen. So I think all these kind of places in Shenzhen needs to be improved, and we can. I think we can make some contribution to make places better. And now the local government also like to promote some projects to improve these kind of places. So, like in Pingshan, there are a lot of historical Asian villages and some old buildings there. So the local government would like us to do some design or proposal to reactivate those places. And maybe I think all of you may come to Shenzhen and to take part in some of this project, maybe. Yeah, I think it will be quite meaningful for the future of the city. Yeah, so that's all I would like to share. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Professor Yang. And I think Shenzhen probably a little bit like also in other places that we discussed, while some of the formal spaces, as in many cities, are more sometimes not really where most of the people are, then there are, on the other hand, is this entire world of the more kind of informal spaces and the kind of placemaking of communities in those kind of more migrant villages and so on that are extremely vibrant, but that have then maybe some other problems, maybe with maybe hygiene and so on, but on the other hand, also very inspiring, right? So it's a kind of an interesting relationship, which maybe takes me to the next two. I think that Jason at the moment is offline, so maybe we can come back to him. So that's why maybe I jump to Melody first and then later Francesco. Melody, you have been, I think, in all sessions, right? So is there anything particular that kind of stayed in your mind, the kind of key takeaways from those sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Hendrik. And yeah, well, thank you, Hendrik, and thank you, Francesco, for having this wonderful opportunity. I mean, I definitely have to say I learned a lot in the last 2 days sitting in all these sessions. I guess I have two small observations, a little bit of a common theme or some of the things that we all most of the speakers address. I guess one of this is the special context of the, in fact, of the Greater Bay Area. I suppose like not all the projects that have been introduced or the presented are specifically for the Greater Bay Area. But then I think I remember from Humana's presentation this morning, she mentioned one thing about, she had some observations about places in Hong Kong and some similarity as those how people use space in Mexico. And I think that is some sort of special context that we have in, sometimes we also had this discussion in one of yesterday's sessions about this idea of the South. Perhaps it's because of its climate, perhaps it's because of, I don't know, culturally, that people automatically like to come out together. And so I think that actually it is also something that quite specific to the area. And that actually give me like some great reflection with my previous life working in a large corporate company, working on like master plan projects and all over in China and also in Shenzhen, Guangzhou, that how like I think like 10, 15 years ago, it really is about this like, you know, grand project, grand master plans. But in I think in the last maybe like 5 years or so, certainly there is a lot of awareness, I think, both from the local government level or from the university. And I also had a lot of young colleagues working in the corporates. We start to have a lot of side initiative of this type of making place, basically. So I think that actually gives a very good opportunity. I think I'm going to definitely share a lot of this presentation to some of my previous colleagues who are actually on the ground doing this kind of work. Yeah, whether it's at a corporate company level or whether it's at a university or their personal level. Yeah, so that actually, yeah, that was kind of like one of the main thing that I feel a lot of that link from us, like as a designer or even like master planner, urban designer, how to yeah, bring things back. And of course now back in Hong Kong and working with students, I think that becomes something that we found very important in our teaching, in our research. Yeah, so I think that is one of the main observation that kind of brings all these different initiatives to this particular context, and I think like the potential of this context here.
Thanks, Melody. Before we maybe open the discussion to everyone else, you can also send us actually all your questions in the chat, or maybe even also just ask us into the space. But before that, maybe just quickly, Francesco, and now maybe as not as moderator in this case, but basically as somebody who also researched public space and so on. Any kind of reflections now that you saw these kind of amazing contributions? Will that somehow affect your own research in view of public space, or how does it link to your interests? Are you happy with all those kind of outcomes? You're muted, Francesco.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, I think I'm really happy about the outcome of this conference, because at the beginning, when you plan an event like that, you try to let's say involve first the people you know. You try to reach other audience, other contribution that maybe is not in your first, not know it in a first instance. So you try to ask someone, because you want to create a sort of map. So even I remember when I have the first draft of the symposium, I talked to you. Remember, we say, oh, why those guests? How we can somehow organize in topics. So I think there was a sort of planning, right? It's like having a project. It's not just inviting a bunch of people, just put there and make everything happen. So I think there's a sort of idea behind an event like that. So even the choice of the title, right? It is important. The choice of the topic, how to group people together. What do you want to have for this for this an event like that? So I think something is predictable. So if you invite certain people, you know what to expect, and sometimes something magic happens, right? When you bring together those speakers, there's something in the discussion you never can have the chance to predict. So I think I'm happy for this sort of unpredictability that can happen in an event like that. But also, if we would like to just switch the attention to public space, it's the same things, right? When you design something, you expect something for the people, but then you have also this sort of unpredictable behavior. that happens. I think this make every public space so special. So I think I would like to share with you a little bit an experience that I have in Barcelona when I was studying and living there. I remember one of my professors just explaining me the project of MACBA, the museum in Barcelona. No, it was installed in Ciutat Vella. This is like the whole town. Of course, it was a very strong intervention. So modern architecture with a square that just cutting into this old fabric. No, and the square was so weird because in this urban tissue of Barcelona, you have all this small pocket space and in a square stretched. So it's like the organic, spontaneous way of creating those, let's say, voids, right? And then immediately you have this sort of platform, just empty, right? Just like a square. Even the dimension was criticized by, you know, the local architects and so on. But after the square was built, after a while, it became occupied by skaters. So I think, and after a while, this became very popular. So, and we discovered all that this was a sort of international meeting point for all the skaters. So, and the square is always full of people who skates and rolling and jumping and stuff like that. So I think that Richard Meyer never reflect about creating a space for skaters, but then that place became occupied and then colonized by users. And then in later stages, it was occupied by Pakistan people who work with, who play with cricket. So I think those unpredictability is so amazing that happen in public space. And I think this is something that make me think about this, what we discuss, right? So we discuss about always two polar element. We discuss about bottom up, but then we have the top down. We discuss about formal, but we have informal. But then we discuss about public, but then we discuss also about private. So I think always we move around these two poles, right? I think it would be nice to make a sort of maps and understand a space which is more private than public, is more formal than informal, is more, you know, top down, bottom up. I think in this wide range of you know, characteristics is very interesting. So I think I saw the conference like this. And I think I was quite happy because when we discussed about making place, I didn't discuss about if public space or private space. I didn't discuss about formal or informal. Making place is very wide term that includes a lot of possibility. And I think this is why, in a way, I make a spin, because when we think about making place, it's not so obvious. I don't want to say that placemaking is obvious, but I think when we talk about placemaking, it's so well known that the people think about some specific things. But I will to switch the attention. Making place, it's something that just require a little bit more reflection, I think, because contain a wide range of opportunity, which I just discussed. Yeah, this is my take.
Thanks very much, and thanks also to bringing us all to Barcelona actually to see this place. Now, I think I know there are many colleagues and people in the audience that also are very experienced, Sujata, Peter, Johnny, many others, right? Also PhD students and other students. Are there any questions? Johnny, I don't know if you can actually open your microphone, then you could even also quickly ask yourself, or I can read us. Can you open your microphone? Johnny?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you can raise your
okay, good.
Yeah.
I just wrote in the chat, and I believe that that Francesco should make an extra effort after these great 2 days of discussion. And I mean, what have been shared in these 2 days was really, really dense and rich, and to a certain extent, to me, extraordinary, because there were a contribution from many different countries, from many different perspectives, and the discussion and panels were also led, most of the cases, very well. So then it leads to very informative sessions. And my students that were attending, they sent me a lot of very positive comments about this, and they have been learning a lot. So thanks about that. And but still, we are not so many here. And I believe this should be very important to let our idea circulate even more, and let policymakers, planners hear about them across the Greater Bay Area, not just in Hong Kong, where this conference has been organized, but also in Shenzhen, in Guangzhou, in Foshan, in Zhuhai, and so on, Macau, obviously. And I think, yeah, Francesco should make this extra effort.
I will try.
Okay. Anyone else that
Yeah, I want to follow up with Gianni. I totally agree, because usually what happens is once the conference ends, it's in our mind for like a few days, but after that, we get back into our normal routines. It might be very good. It doesn't need to be very elaborate, Francesco. It can be like a short piece, but at least the key messages are put in there, and then that can be like a working draft for something that we can do in the future as well. And I mean, as Gianni says, to share with other people across, maybe I think probably with Shenzhen to begin with, and maybe later look at a way how to other cities. Because what I heard from ULI's, because they have another initiative as well, is that they didn't want to be seen that Hong Kong is trying to tell cities in China what to do. And so maybe that is another point to think about. But since Shenzhen is already represented by the professor here, it's probably okay to work together with Hong Kong and Shenzhen. And then that composite can then actually, maybe it'll be easier to reach out to all the other cities in GBA. So, but I really think it was a wonderful conference. I liked the way you made the twist of Francesco. Making place is much better, because it really, as you say, makes people think a bit more. And even I've been there for the whole conference actually, because this is very close to my heart as well. And I really think that the diversity of topics, the different speakers with their experience, it was just excellent. So don't lose it. Wrap it up in maybe even if it's 10 pages, doesn't matter. Then it could become like a working draft that can lead to something else. And maybe Chinese U, School of Architecture, can put some funding into this, and then maybe even work with HKIUD. Donald Choi is already here, and take it forward maybe. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Peter, I can see you're
Thank you.
prepared to jump in. Yeah.
No. Hello, Hendrik. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say that I've been very impressed with what Francesco has done, and the quality, and the kind of also the atmosphere. The atmosphere was very, very special. It was like friends exchanging ideas. And that brings me to the idea of maybe, and I think many people are sort of saying it indirectly, but starting a legacy, starting something that this thing is something that is the first of many. Because I believe that it has the format where it could happen next year. It could be also in the same place, the Greater Bay Area, but it could also travel. And it could travel around these places. So and it could go to other places and bring other people together. And I've done a few of these conferences, and I think after you finish them, Francesco, there'll be this kind of like, it's so tired and so kind of so many things happen. And I think it's planting that seed. and I think you've planted it. And I just can't wait for the branches and the blossoms to come. So congratulations and thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Okay, so I think there is still one more part coming. The one quick question I have, because very quickly our other panelists will be, or we move to the next group, right? Just a question maybe to Donald, because you are very much involved in many things in the city, right? Would you see any kind of opportunities, interesting things like how we can take that further, and anything we can come back to you or discuss more, or anything that comes to your mind? You are muted. Donald, we cannot hear you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of opportunities as Hong Kong. I think as a community, they are much more kind of aware of the benefit of good urbanism and how making places would contribute to their daily life. From the recent project that I have been involved. In the central market, for example, there are quite a number of neighborhood groups actually volunteer their kind of advisors to us as how to make the place vibrant, and also by offering to organize events. I think from the university, it would be really a good kind of way of going down, just like the student competition. Let them identify kind of a leftover space. Go down to the community, discuss with them on what they need, prepare kind of design or proposal, and actually gather resources, from private sector, from public government funding, if possible, to really realize some of this kind of intervention. It will be really a good testing ground to test some of our urban design theory in realization and get feedback. I think a lot of the problem of urban design is because it's of such a large scale and could take quite a long time to realize. And you wouldn't actually understand the mistake that we have been making until too late. So I think small intervention, in actually neighborhood with a lot of the idea being tested, I think that would be a great idea. And we would be very happy to team up with CU and other urban design group to try out ideas, to make it a real project and test it in reality, in the daily life.
Thanks so much, Donald, Choi, and also all the other panelists of this session. Also, Professor Yang, obviously, maybe we might come back to you also again, right, as our partner in Shenzhen. It would be great to work together. And now I would say I give the word back to Francesco for the last part of the session, which actually is also related to this last words, basically, right, with Jiaping Li also and Ethan Kent. Okay, Francesco.
Thank you so much, Hendrik, and thank you all of you for participating in this panel discussion. Thanks for the nice words. Yes, I'm really tired, but I'm happy. This is most relevant things. It may be possible that we will have a special issue of a journal about the topic. So it could be sort of a small anticipation. It's not sure because we have to work on, but I think this would be something to be a kind of good follow-up. But I also agree that this kind of discussion has to really be used, because I think sometimes having all this knowledge all together is not that easy. So I think now it's there, right? Already we have something that we collect all this, you know, video recording. It's already there. So I think it's a small step, but I think I understand that what we can do next. So I think I'm looking forward for even scale up this and try to understand how maybe taking the suggestion of Peter, moving, you know, travel with these ideas in even other cities. So